India has officially crossed the threshold. With over 1.4 billion people, it recently surpassed China to become the most populous nation on Earth. But if you look at a map of the globe, you have to ask, out of everywhere on the planet, why did this specific piece of land become the most densely packed human environment in history? The answer is what geographers call a caloric engine. To the north, the Himalayas act as a colossal water tower, shedding meltwater down its slopes. That endless water supply pools into the vast, flat Indo-Gangetic Plains. Combine that constant irrigation with a double monsoon system, and you get highly predictable, incredibly productive agricultural conditions. This map shows the cultivation of food crops across the subcontinent. Notice how heavily the symbols for high-yield crops like wheat and rice cluster across the northern plains and coastal regions. Thousands of years ago, early domestication of these grains established a massive baseline population. So, India didn't randomly get crowded. Long before modern technology existed, the subcontinent was a geographic trap perfectly optimized to support massive numbers of human beings. For centuries, that immense population held relatively steady. But in the mid-20th century, this ancient agricultural baseline collided head-on with modern medical interventions. Public health initiatives and aggressive vaccination campaigns, like the push to eradicate smallpox, suddenly crashed the historical death rate. People were living longer, and infant survival rates improved dramatically almost overnight. But while the death rate plummeted, the birth rate remained incredibly high. In a deeply agrarian society, large families were still an economic necessity to provide labor and ensure against deep poverty. Demographers call this mathematical disconnect the Great Gap. Between 1951 and 1981, as the death rate fell and births kept climbing, India experienced the fastest population surge in human history, adding 340 million people in just 30 years. This mid-century surge was a temporary, explosive byproduct of modern medicine arriving decades before economic modernization could balance the scales. If you look at crowded city streets today, it is easy to assume that India is still endlessly exploding. Modern data proves that assumption is entirely wrong. This chart shows India's total fertility rate. In the 1950s, women had around 6 children. Today, that number plummeted to exactly 2.0. This dips below the replacement rate, the mathematical minimum to keep a population stable, which demographers place at 2.1. This fertility collapse was no accident. It is the result of improved maternal health, women entering the workforce, and decades of aggressive family planning campaigns. India is no longer an exponentially multiplying society. Down at the individual household level, its reproductive engine has already crossed the threshold into shrinking, which brings up an immediate mathematical paradox. If the birth rate is officially below replacement level, why is the country's population still growing by roughly 1 million people every single month? The answer lies in a demographic mechanism known as population momentum. This diagram outlines the country's age structure. Because of the mid-century explosion, there is a massive cohort of young adults in their prime childbearing years. Even if they have fewer children, the absolute volume of babies born still vastly outpaces the elderly passing away. Current expansion is the lingering mathematical result of that massive 20th century cohort moving through the system. But this demographic cooling is not happening evenly across the country. In reality, it has created a radically fractured geography of growth. Southern states like Kerala and Tamil Nadu transitioned to lower fertility rates decades ago. As a result, those regional populations are already aging rapidly, and local economies are actually starting to face looming labor shortages. Contrast that situation with northern states like Bihar and Uttar Pradesh today. They still maintain slightly higher fertility rates, and over the next decade, these few states will essentially drive all of India's remaining population growth. Zoom out to the national aggregate, though, and you see the ultimate consequence of this timeline, the youth bulge. Right now, as a direct result of this momentum, India possesses the absolute largest young workforce in human history. Economists call this window the demographic dividend. It is a highly favorable temporary period where the ratio of prime age productive workers absolutely dwarfs the number of dependent elders. The country now faces a high-stakes deadline to harness this concentration of human capital before it inevitably ages into the exact same irreversible demographic decline already being seen across the rest of the globe.